The church bells rang through the bright morning air just as Laurel stepped onto the stone pathway carrying a bouquet she had never planned to keep. She had spent 3 years believing that the man she loved would finally return with the promise he once whispered beneath the summer sun, but instead she watched another woman walk proudly beside him toward the church doors. Her heart shattered without a single word being spoken. The future she had built in her imagination disappeared in one painful moment, and she stood frozen, wondering why God had remained silent while every prayer she had prayed seemed to fall unanswered to the ground. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel so our family and our community can continue sharing stories that inspire hearts around the world. Laurel had always believed that faith meant waiting patiently. She grew up in a peaceful countryside town where every sunrise reminded her that God made all things beautiful in His perfect time. Her parents taught her that love should never be rushed, and that a faithful heart would always find its way to the blessings prepared by heaven. Those lessons became the foundation of her life, but as the years passed, patience slowly became painful. She met a charming young architect named Preston during a church volunteer event. He spoke with confidence about dreams, purpose, and building a future together. Although they never became officially engaged, his promises sounded certain enough for Laurel to build her entire future around them. When he accepted a career opportunity several states away, he promised he would return as soon as he was established. Laurel believed every word because trusting people came naturally to her. The months became years. Letters became fewer. Phone calls turned into short messages filled with excuses about work and timing. Friends gently encouraged Laurel to continue living her life instead of waiting endlessly, but she defended Preston every time. She convinced herself that true love required sacrifice and endurance. Every Sunday morning she sat in the same church pew believing one day he would walk through the doors smiling, ready to fulfill every promise. She declined invitations, ignored opportunities to travel, and quietly watched life move forward while she remained emotionally anchored to someone who was drifting farther away. Across town lived a skilled carpenter named Graham. He was known for repairing old homes, restoring broken furniture, and volunteering whenever someone in the community needed help. He carried quiet strength rather than loud confidence. Several years earlier he had lost his younger sister during a sudden illness, and that tragedy transformed his understanding of faith. Instead of becoming bitter, he devoted himself to serving others. He believed God's greatest answers often appeared disguised as ordinary people willing to love faithfully without expecting recognition. Graham frequently noticed Laurel at community service projects. She always smiled kindly, yet her eyes carried sadness that few people recognized. Whenever heavy tables needed lifting or elderly neighbors required assistance, Graham naturally appeared beside her without expecting thanks. Laurel appreciated his kindness but never truly saw him. Her heart remained fixed on someone absent, making her blind to someone faithfully present. One bright spring morning the church organized volunteers to renovate an old family shelter that had suffered years of neglect. Laurel joined despite her emotional exhaustion, hoping hard work would quiet her thoughts. Graham was already leading repairs with calm determination. Throughout the day they painted walls, replaced damaged windows, and built new bookshelves for children. Laurel accidentally spilled paint across the floor and immediately blamed herself for creating more work. Graham simply smiled, cleaned the mess alongside her, and reminded everyone that mistakes often became opportunities to improve something even more beautiful. Those words lingered in Laurel's mind long after the project ended. They sounded strangely comforting because they reflected the truth she had been avoiding. Her greatest mistake was not spilling paint. It was believing her entire future depended upon one person instead of trusting God's direction. Several weeks later Laurel unexpectedly received an elegant wedding invitation addressed in Preston's handwriting. For one brief moment her heart raced with hope until she opened the envelope and discovered he was inviting her to witness his marriage to someone else. He thanked her for understanding that life had taken a different path and expressed hope they could remain friends. Every sentence felt colder than the last. She realized the promises she had treasured had become nothing more than memories for him. Still believing she needed closure, Laurel attended the ceremony. Standing outside the church beneath the warm afternoon sunlight, she watched Preston happily greeting guests. He smiled politely when he noticed her but continued celebrating without hesitation. In that instant Laurel understood she had spent years waiting for someone who had already walked away emotionally long ago. She quietly left before the ceremony began, carrying the untouched bouquet she had purchased as a gift. As she wandered through the nearby park fighting tears, she noticed volunteers distributing food baskets for struggling families. Graham was among them, laughing with children and carefully helping an elderly widow carry groceries to her car. His joy looked genuine, peaceful, and completely independent of circumstances. Seeing him serve others while her own heart remained trapped in disappointment stirred something unexpected within her. Instead of asking why Preston had abandoned his promises, Laurel found herself asking why she had ignored the countless blessings God had placed directly beside her. She had mistaken silence for absence when perhaps God had been patiently redirecting her attention all along. Determined to rebuild her life, Laurel stopped measuring every day against the possibility of Preston returning. She accepted a position coordinating charitable outreach programs through her church. Her work introduced her to families overcoming addiction, children recovering from difficult circumstances, and elderly neighbors battling loneliness. Every story reminded her that brokenness did not have to become the final chapter. Graham often joined those outreach efforts. Day after day Laurel discovered qualities she had never noticed before. He listened more than he spoke. He treated every person with dignity regardless of their situation. When others received recognition, he quietly stepped aside. His faith was not performed for applause but demonstrated through consistent compassion. Their friendship grew naturally beneath bright afternoon skies while serving meals, repairing homes, planting community gardens, and organizing charity events. Neither rushed the relationship. Instead, both allowed trust to develop through shared purpose rather than emotional excitement. Laurel began laughing again. She discovered peace she had not experienced for years. The emptiness left behind by Preston slowly filled with gratitude she never expected. One afternoon while delivering supplies to a struggling single mother, Laurel learned the woman had nearly lost hope after years of betrayal. As Laurel encouraged her, she suddenly realized she was speaking words she herself desperately needed months earlier. God had transformed her deepest wound into a source of comfort for someone else. That realization overwhelmed her with quiet tears of gratitude. As the seasons changed, Graham confessed that he had admired Laurel for a long time but refused to pursue her while her heart belonged elsewhere. He believed genuine love never demanded attention but patiently waited until the other person was emotionally free. His honesty carried no pressure, only sincere respect. Laurel was deeply moved because for the first time someone loved her without trying to possess her. They continued praying together, serving together, and encouraging one another to pursue God's purpose before personal happiness. Their relationship became rooted not in fantasy but in daily faithfulness. Laurel finally understood the difference between waiting for a specific person and waiting upon God. One often leads to disappointment, while the other always leads toward growth. Months later the same church that once witnessed Laurel's heartbreak welcomed another joyful gathering beneath clear daylight skies. This time she walked through its doors with peaceful confidence rather than anxious expectation. Friends smiled as Graham gently held her hand, not because either of them had found perfect lives, but because they had found perfect peace in trusting God's timing. During the celebration Laurel looked around the sanctuary and remembered the countless prayers she once believed had gone unanswered. Now she understood that God had not ignored her cries. He had simply refused to give her what would ultimately break her heart even more deeply. Instead, he patiently shaped her character, strengthened her faith, healed her disappointments, and quietly placed the right person beside her long before she was ready to recognize him. Before we reach the end of this journey, leave a meaningful comment sharing one lesson this story reminded you about trusting God's timing, letting go of the wrong person, or believing in second chances. Your words may encourage someone else who is still waiting for hope today. As Laurel and Graham stepped outside into the warm afternoon sunshine surrounded by grateful family, faithful friends, and a joyful community, she realized the greatest miracle was not finding love again. The greatest miracle was discovering that God's answer had been closer than she ever imagined. While she spent years staring toward the horizon waiting for someone who would never return, heaven had quietly placed a compassionate, faithful servant beside her every step of the way. Her waiting had not been wasted because it taught her wisdom. Her heartbreak had not been meaningless because it prepared her to recognize authentic love. Her tears had not been forgotten because every one of them watered the seeds of a future far more beautiful than she could have planned herself. She finally understood that faith is not holding tightly to our own expectations but trusting that God's plans are always greater than our own, even when we cannot yet see them. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May this story remind you that sometimes the person you are desperately waiting for is not the one God has chosen for you, and that His greatest blessings often stand quietly beside you, waiting for the moment your heart is finally ready to see them. If you'd like, I can also create a YouTube SEO package with a viral title, description, hashtags, keywords, and tags for this story.